Hello, everyone. We are back to talk about Alan Wake 2 and give a little bit of a review. We just finished Alan Wake 2 and the DLC, Night Springs DLC, which we played as we ran through the playthrough. So if you want to see both of those, obviously the videos are here on the channel. As always, when we beat a game, I like to talk about it from a mechanical standpoint. I like to talk about it from a story standpoint, and then an overall recommend, not recommend, that kind of thing. So first off, mechanically, there are a lot of things going on in this game. There are a lot of different mechanics that all kind of combine together, but in a way that makes sense for the stories being told. One of the mechanics is there are two characters, and at some point you can actually switch between them. The combat is basically the same throughout. There's not a lot of changes. There is a few fights where there's like an interactable during a fight. But other than that, it's basically you hit him with your flashlight, you put him into a weakened state or a physical state, and you pop him with your gun. I talked about this in our Alan Wake 1 review, and in our American Nightmare review, but I'll be honest, this combat was not. I don't jive with the combat in any of the Alan Wake games. It's one of my least favorite parts of the game, because it makes it a little bit tedious. It had gotten to the point with this playthrough where I actually had just turned it down to story mode, just so that way we could interact with the story and not have to worry about dealing with the combat as much, because there's a lot of resource management. It's very survival horror in that where you have to manage your inventory spaces and your resources and all of that. So if you're looking for that kind of experience, I think it does that well enough. I just don't like the having to, like, you have to beam them and then shoot them and then beam them and then shoot them and then beam them, and then it's just I don't know. It doesn't feel great, to be honest. So not a fan of that, but I wasn't a fan of that in Alan Wake 1 either. And American Nightmare, I believe, was a fine middle ground, because it's basically you're just like beam, shoot, beam, shoot, beam, shoot. Like, it's very quick, it's very clean. I know a lot of people are not a fan of American Nightmare, but I think combat-wise, that has probably been my favorite so far, even including this game. But that's your main combat mechanic. There's a lot of stuff that interacts with story. Alan has some stuff, and I'm going to keep this kind of spoiler-free because I know there's probably going to be some people that are playing it soon and possibly for the first time. So when we get into the story stuff and all of that, I'm going to try to give you an overview, my thoughts, without spoiling too much. But Alan has a mechanic where he can take light from a light source and move it, which is very cool. He also has a mechanic where he steps into a scene and he can use keywords to change basically to essentially change that scene to something else. Like, something else has happened in that scene, which is very cool. So it's like, you go into a closet, you put closet blue, and then all of a sudden the closet's blue, right? Like, that kind of thing. That doesn't happen in the game. I'm trying to give an example that doesn't spoil the story at all. But basically, it has a way of shifting back and forth, and you use that to find different things in the environment to interact and unlock areas. And on top of that, that's his kind of like plot device. He uses what's called a plot board. And another main mechanic between both the characters is they both have a mental space. For Alan, it is the writing room, and for Saga, it is the mind place. And that's important for stuff in the story, obviously. But Alan interacts with that place basically just to change scenes, whereas Saga and her mechanic in that place is much more in depth, which we'll talk about in just a second. Now, there is kind of your normal, there's safe rooms, which is something in this game, and there is like unlockables to find and upgrades and stuff like that. So there's stuff to find, there's stuff to interact with. I'm trying to think if there's any other mechanics. Of course, with Saga's mind place, she has a case board, kind of like the plot thing, but it doesn't change the world. It more gives her information. So for her, it's like a murder mystery. She's trying to figure out what's going on, and she uses her red string to kind of connect this from that. She uses an ability called profiling that allows her to kind of dive deeper into the thoughts of the characters and allow to connect those characters with events, and it allows her to progress through. It is very murder mystery in its design, which I think works really well from the aspect of how Saga Anderson is approaching it. You do get a nice scene near the end with her in the Mind Place. But again, I'm not going to spoil anything with that. But let's see. Any other mechanics? There's a few... Saga encounters a lot of different puzzles. Almost all of them are optional. But you encounter different puzzles. There's puzzles for boxes. There's puzzles for... they're called nursery rhymes. And then there's puzzles for... What's the other thing? There's one of the... Oh, there's deer heads. I think there's a couple other kind of collectible stuff. Obviously, you find manuscripts and all of that. But basically, Saga is trying to figure out the case from a FBI standpoint, and Alan is trying to do what he does and figure his way through the story, given what he knows and writes. And that's kind of the overall mechanics there. Now, story-wise, again, I'm going to try to avoid as many spoilers as possible here. But it's very easy to spoil this game because there's a lot of twists and turns. I will say I wasn't too surprised by any one twist or turn. Because I kind of figured, like, based on the direction we had been given, I kind of figured out where it was going. I don't think that took away from the payoff whatsoever. There's a lot of payoffs throughout, and again, you actually run these stories parallel because you have Saga's story and you have Alan's story, and both of those kind of run parallel to each other, and some of the reveals in one start helping some of the reveals in the other, but you can play it however you want. I think some people have sat down and kind of mapped out the best way to play both characters to get like a big reveal. But what we did is we just played through all of Saga's until it told us to stop, like it forced us to stop, and then we played through all of Alan's until we, we were forced to stop, and then we moved into the finale. So, but overall, the story has a lot of depth to it, not just from a, like, storytelling standpoint, but from, this is a game where if you've played the first one definitely feels more like a thriller, like a crime thriller, whereas this is most notably a horror game. And with that, they're able to talk about a lot of darker topics. And the Dark Place is both a physical place, right? But it's also a discussion about mental place. And they get into that discussion really, really deeply in Alan Wake 2, which I do really appreciate. Instead of it being kind of abstract or ambiguous, they put a hit the nail on the head with this is what we're talking about, this is what each character is going through, this is how someone could relate to these things. We talked about in one scene how one of the things they do for one of the sequences is literally something that I personally have encountered in therapy. So it's very interesting to see that, like, in a game, but the story, again, it follows Alan and Saga as they run parallel until they finally, meet up and reach a finale. There's a lot of twists and turns. There's a lot of characters. The acting it's just amazing. I think all of the actors, like, honestly, they should give, like, movie awards to these actors because they might as well have made, like, 4 movies for this game. Like, it's absolutely insane. I think everybody did such a fantastic job with how they played the story. A lot of feeling, a lot of emotion, especially where it's needed. There's not any, like, weirdness where it's just like, I guess I'm here. Like, that kind of thing. And it plays on a lot of, like, on insecurities. It plays a lot on, like, depression, anxiety, through multiple characters, through multiple lenses. And the story it tells is just really, really good. And it gets a little mind bending at first, because you're like, okay, I've got to keep track of this and that and this and that and this and that and this and that. But it does a very good job, at least in my opinion, of wrapping it all back together in a package that I think most people could pick up most of the things, right? Like, whenever you watch something in film, or whether you play a game, like, not everybody's going to get everything, but I think even if someone comes in here with not a mind for kind of extrapolating and for dissecting and stuff like that, I still think that they could get a really, really good story out of Alan Wake 2. I appreciate the characters. Again, kudos to the actors, man. Like this this guy right here, the guy who the face of Alan Wake, man, he is very good at his job. Like, he is definitely in my top ratings of actors. Just his ability to pull off so many different, essentially, roles, all within the confines of one scenario, right? It's crazy. He's so good at it. He's so good at it. And everybody is too, dude. Saga is absolutely amazing. I love how kind of she evolves as a character. Of course, we've got Casey, who he's it's interesting because he's definitely feels like a Max Payne-ish stand-in, which works really well for, I think, Saga, because it gives Saga someone who's very grounded, and I think that's really cool. Plus, we meet a lot of really cool characters. The Old Gods of Asgard band is... They pop in with quite a few jams, and every one of them is worth listening to. The soundtrack is amazing. But yeah, story-wise, I can honestly say I don't think I've played a game that has a story like Alan Wake. I've played a lot of horror games. Some retro, some new, and Alan Wake, I would probably have to say, bar none, story is one of the ones that I have never played before, but I am very glad I did, because this is such a good story. It's such a good examination of kind of the human psyche and the things we deal with and how we advance and how we move forward, how we take steps back, how we fall, how we get up. Just top-notch storytelling on top of all the mind-bending craziness of the dark place and all of that. So here's where we get to the overall, whether I recommend it or whether I wouldn't. Now, this is where it's hard for me, because I would say, based on my experience, I would love to recommend this. However, and I don't know if anybody at Remedy will ever see this, I had a lot of problems getting this to run properly. I don't know why some of the stuff broke the way it did. I don't know why the game would just do a 180 and sometimes be great and then turn around and, like, 3 scenes later not run at all. Like, the optimization, I don't know if it's the engine. I don't know if it's because this game was meant to run on consoles and not necessarily PC, or what it is, but optimization-wise, this was one of the biggest hassles in a modern game I've ever had, getting a game to run properly. That is why it's very hard for me to make a decision on whether I recommend this or don't recommend this. Because I feel like if you play this on PC, it is very much buyer beware. Because this game might not run for you. And I'm not running an old system. I just got a new system like a year ago, a new PC. Based on what I read, I should be able to run this game at 4K max settings, no issues with the setup that I have. But to talk about a little bit about the issues, the first issue we ran into is the scenes. Some of the cutscenes, the audio would stop. Like, the text would go across the screen, the audio would stop, and then it would wait a few seconds, and then it would catch up, and then of course the text is now misaligned to the audio. But if the text, like whatever was happening on screen, finished before the audio, it would just cut it off. It would just stop. So they'd be in the middle of a sentence, be like, "Hey, we're driving down," and that it would just stop, and then you'd go into the next scene. And I fixed that by moving it from a solid state drive, which, by the way, is what the recommended things are, I moved it from being on a solid state drive to being on M.2 drive. That fixed that issue. However, the game itself was running really, really poorly. So I had to mess with settings because the problem is there's certain settings, if you turn them to low, it makes the game look really, really bad. Like, awful. Some of it, like, it makes the water look like sludge, but not in a good way. It makes like all the foliage and ground look just like one giant muddy mess. And we had to sit there and tweak it and tweak it and tweak it, which made it very, very hard for me to want to push through and play this game. And like I said, I don't know if anybody at Remedy will ever see this review. If you do, I would love if you guys could have like a link or a set of links or something to help people be able to modify their game to run potentially on different stuff. I know you can't make a list for everybody's different settings, but like your most notable settings, like, oh, if you turn this down to low or if you turn this off, it may allow you to continue playing the game. I think that would be really, really helpful because I had to go through 3 videos and like 7 different forums just to find out how to get the game to run properly, because some of the stuff you had to do in the INI file. If you don't know, that's basically a file that happens when it initializes. It looks at a bunch of settings and initializes under those settings. There's some stuff that's only in the INI file that's not in the game. I'm not sure if there's a way you could add that to the game. I know you're releasing a DLC in October, but if some of those settings could come across to the game and you could flip those on and off, then maybe people would be able to play this more consistently. But that is my biggest like thing hold back from being able to recommend Alan Wake 2 is I don't know if people will be able to run it. And for me, paying for how much is Alan Wake 2? Because you'd have to get the deluxe edition to get the lake house. So let's see. Alan Wake 2. I'm going to get you the price right here. So Alan Wake 2, if it'll load. Doesn't tell me. Here we go. Alan Wake 2 deluxe edition is $70, right? So and that will get you both DLCs, which I think is a fair price for the amount of content you get. However, the problem I have is you might spend $70 and not be able to play the game. So like I said, if someone could compile either at Remedy or someone that works with Remedy or someone that works with the game engine, if they could compile some sort of list to help people be like, hey, flip some switches here and we'll get the game running for you, I would wholeheartedly recommend it. But I have to just say, buyer beware, this game may not run for you. Just flat out, it may not work. It may run at like 10 frames per second, even if you have some like mid-range hardware. It is very intensive, and I think it just has some optimization things that really need to be ironed out. If you don't have those problems, 100% recommend. If your computer doesn't have any issues running the game, if you're able to get it and it, make your alterations and it runs fine, this game is worth every single penny. It is, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, this is an experience that I have never had before. And for someone who's been gaming as long as I have, that's very hard to do. But this game is absolutely amazing. I was tied in every bit of the story beats. I was ready for every twist, every turn. It is such an amazing game. Again, I will say this till the end of the times. Kudos to the actors. Wake's actor, Saga's actor, of course, Sam Lake as Casey, always killing it. I love Old Gods of Asgard. They're absolutely amazing too. All of the audio stuff, audio design, and the music, really, really great. I could not praise this game more, like I said, if it didn't have the optimization issues. If that was not an issue, this game would be my be in my top 5 probably for horror games. But because it has that issues, it's very hard for me to full on just play the game. But if you could get through those issues, play the game. It is worth it. It is worth your time. This experience is very deep in a lot of factors, and it is worth every second of your time. Again, buyer beware. It may not run for you, or it may run very poorly for you, so be prepared for that. I don't know if there's like a demo or something you could do to test it. I would look into that. If there's some sort of benchmark or something you could run, that would be very helpful to see before you buy. And again, if you want to play the DLCs, you have to get the deluxe version, because the Lake House, which comes out in October, only comes out to for the deluxe versions. I'm thinking it'll come out probably later for everybody, so they could buy that separately. But yeah, so that's been our review of Alan Wake 2. I love this game. This game was absolutely worth fighting through the optimization, fighting through all of the stuff that we had to fight through to get here. It's worth every penny. It's worth every second. I really, really enjoyed it. I can't wait for Lake House. I can't wait for Control 2. I can't wait for the Max Payne remake. Like, I am on the Remedy train. They've got me. I've boarded the train. I'm ready to go. And I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, don't forget to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. That helps us out as well. And leave a comment. What did you think? Did you run into optimization issues? Did it run just fine for you? Did you play it on console? I would love to hear from my console friends. If you played it on console, didn't have any issues, I would love to hear that. Tell me what you played it on and all of that. Love to hear from you. But that's going to do this for a review, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.